I'm going to give you the disclaimer. I'm full of the energy from that sun up there. It's a geomagnetic storm, super high. And the important thing about the geomagnetic storm, in Stefan Burns's comments, I always see it makes my bones ache. It makes me feel bad. That's your energy score is in the suffering side. All the sun does is amplify your frequency. So um, if you're suffering chronic pain and that stuff, the sun will make you have more chronic pain. Me in the middle path, I'm safe, grateful, and worthy. And what that sun does is make it so I have super duper manifestation powers. Um, I don't manifest anything. I'm manifesting in a different plane. So I take that energy and manifest outwardly, but sometimes it's just too much for me to handle. So I make these videos just to talk and stuff. It's important to understand it. You can tell me I'm crazy, but most likely you're just buying into the teacher, parent, pastor, or parent, teacher, pastor programming. If you want to tell me I'm crazy, it's okay. But what I would like you to do is tell me why you think I don't know what I'm talking about, and have it rooted in psychology and physics and logic, so that we can come to a better solution. Very few people on the planet know what I'm talking about. It's very hidden knowledge. It's very hard to come by. Um, I make it the video, but the mind is accessible by everybody, but the heart is your flashlight. So I see the truth um, to my perspective, and my perspective is very rich. So, but I'm going to talk about my perspective and the Mandela effect. This can get really confusing, and this one might get longer than 10 minutes. Um, but let's use physics. The physics string theory say there's 11 dimensions. And those 11 dimensions are the positive end of suffering 11, middle path 11, temptation 11. Those are your 33 dimensions that everybody operates in, right? Now, at the bottom, you have your negative ones. Nobody operates in the murder one, right? You die. Um, and in the temptation side, the reason I got raped so many times is so that I couldn't generate money, power, success, and status, right? They steal my ability. My vitality was stolen from me so that the people that raped me got access to the pain and suffering. So my pain and suffering became their ability to manifest money, power, greed, or money, power, success, and status. And the sacrifice, when somebody dies, that becomes the control for the guy in charge. We call him Jesus or Yeshua, depending on how cool you think you are. Um, so my vitality to manifest money, power, success, and status was stolen through rape. Now, hurt me a lot, make me live a very traumatic life, which I lived a very traumatic life. And then the people that stole my vitality and money, power, success, and status get um, essentially my manifestation ability to do that stuff. So my dad lives in $1 million house in one of the nicest communities in Michigan. My sister lives in a couple $1 million house in one of the nicest communities in Michigan. The guys that, you know, the other people had to pay, I believe, to rape me, and then the more they do it, the more they steal my vitality, the more I suffer, the more they can generate. It's super easy. One of my rapists told me I'll never be as rich as him, and thankfully he's correct. I don't ever want to be rich, but the reason he's so rich is because he raped me so many times, and I lived a very fearful life, and my fear became his wealth. That's how that circle works. So anyway, 11 in suffering, 11 in the middle path, 11 in temptation, right? It's inverted. So your frequency goes up on the suffering, kind of down on the suffering, down on the temptation, up on the middle path, and across, if you can imagine, there's 11 levels. So the highest of your middle path became 13. I'm in 13 now, but if I was in 11, I would be at the 11 suffering, and I would be at the 11 temptation. Um, the 11th universe, the 11th dimension is the most suffering, the most enlightened, and the most tempted people. Uh, so those are the 11 universes, and it's by weight. So the higher you go in fear, anger, guilt, resentment, the more enlightened people you have, right? Um, it's just a weight, and the weight of the universe is the more fearful you are, the higher you are in the suffering side, the more enlightened people there are, the more tempted people there are. Those are the 11 universes, 11 dimensions of the string theory, let's say. And the reason, the reason the Mandela effect is you're slipping through universes. Uh, the people that were in the universe where the fruit of the loom, I mean, you were in a universe where the fruit of the loom uh, logo didn't have a cornucopia, or does have a cornucopia, the one you used to be in. But as you grow intellectually, as we enlighten as a group, um, fruit of the loom has a different logo, and it's because of the dimension that fruit of the loom was operating in at the 11th dimension, where we're currently at. If you're watching this, um, maybe down at the 6th is maybe down at the 6th they had a cornucopia, and now up at the 11th there isn't a cornucopia. um, I explain how a universe is created. I'm A, you're B, together we make C. So the dimension is getting consolidated up at the top. That's why the world's spiritually awakening, is because I'm so enlightened, and the temptations getting out of control and the sufferings getting out of control. Whatever your frequency is, we're all getting dragged to the top. That's why, demonic possessions is up, and the weather is getting all crazy and all that stuff. And then you have to understand, I am tying universes together by understanding the truth. The truth. Let's have some fun on the truth. So my friend from Romania comes from the bloodline or the perspective of Vlad the Impaler. My friend from Kazakhstan comes from the perspective or the understanding of the Watchers. I know people. My own bloodline includes Hitler and Kennedy. My father is Jefferson. So you can imagine, once I understand that truth, I'm tying together timelines. There's a billion different timelines. There's 11 different dimensions, but the truth will set you free. So once you understand the past, which is why they hide it from us, but once you understand the truth of the past, you can tie timelines together. So again, there was a timeline somewhere in one of the dimensions where the fruit of the loom had a cornucopia. Well, now we're in the dimension of the timeline where the fruit of the loom doesn't have a cornucopia. It's that simple. Maybe I will get done in 10 minutes. I say simple, but 11 dimensions and then a million timelines. But the perspective doesn't get tied together until someone understands the truth. So if I lie to you about everything, then you'll never understand your truth. And your life is a data representative model of all your lives. So as I understood Kevin's truth more, I understood my past more, past lives. If you create trauma in the brain, like being raped all the time, you're never going to see your past lives. You're never going to know who you are. So the more important you are in the script, what role you have in the play, the more they traumatize you, the less you know about your past lives. As you break up your trauma of your life, Jung called it shadow work. It's just trauma processing. You go back to the moment that you were living in, and you figure out that you were safe, grateful, and worthy then too. how can I be grateful for being raped? Well, it made me super powerful. If I didn't struggle as much as I did, I wouldn't have the ability or the knowledge to do what I'm doing now. As I understood my life more, I understood more of my past lives. As I understood more of my past lives, I got more of the knowledge from the past before I was around. So I understand who killed Kennedy, and I understand how ancient Greece worked, and I kind of understand that back in the day, sex was a currency. Uh, I didn't learn that in a book. I learned that in my mind. As I processed my trauma, I learned more of my past lives. Your life that you live is is kind of the gatekeeper. And as you open up more of your life, you learn more about your past lives. When you learn more about your past lives, you get knowledge and wisdom from back then that's important for your journey today. That's shadow work, that's trauma processing. And then the Mandela effect, I'm sorry, just to recap the Mandela effect, you have 11 dimensions in physics, string theory. The highest enlightened has the most suffering and the most temptations, and it goes down. The lowest enlightened has the least suffering and the least temptations. Everyone has a role in there, but what I'm doing is grabbing everybody that I've ever met, which is a huge amount of people, and tying them together in my timeline. I know you guys are suffering. I know it's hard, but it's going to be over soon. I don't mean to do all this stuff to everybody, but in the end, your biggest fear is your biggest reward. So I don't care who you are. You can heal. You should do your trauma processing. You should do your shadow work, which is simple. You relax in the moment and you do something you love to do. I color, or I used to work on spreadsheets or whatever it might be. Um, and then as you do it, you listen to the voice. And what that voice is doing is beating you up about the past or worrying about the future. But every time, all you do is you process each of your thoughts like safe, grateful, and worthy. If it was a really hard time trauma in the past, come to the fact that that trauma made you stronger. God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, so the stronger the trauma, the more suffering you had, the more important you are, the stronger you are. Um, Everybody has like a reoccurring thought of what they hated about themselves, right? It fires as soon as you calm down, so you always try and stay busy doing stuff and ignore the voice. You don't want to ignore the voice, you want to listen to it and then process that moment, whatever it was, as safe, grateful, and worthy. And I bring it up probably too much, but being raped, um, I was safe. I'm still here today, and I'm grateful because it made me strong, right? Then now, when I think about being raped, I don't have that oh my God, I'm in a fetal position and I can't move. That's the important thing. Safe, grateful, and worthy in this moment all the time as you're maneuvering through life. You're safe, grateful, and worthy. And then make time to sit down and listen to the voice that's screaming in your head, and then process those thoughts that are racing through your head that you're safe, grateful, and worthy. You're safe because you're here today, and be grateful because whatever it was just a lesson that you didn't learn. And the lessons get harder and harder and harder, and you climb up dimensions as you're doing it. So, in order to be in the hardest dimension, where your most important role, where you've struggled the most, you'd had to not learn a bunch of lessons, right? How many lessons you learn is dictated by which part you play in the play. The people that are followers don't have a bunch of trauma. The people that are the elect, the 18 elect, they have a lot of trauma. The people that are the royal couple, they have even more trauma. And then the people at the top, the serpents, the lizard people who think they're God, which they could be if they learn to fucking not be such assholes to everybody, find empathy and forgive themselves for doing what they did. But they're gonna suffer or have the most. Like the top, the most enlightened, you have the most suffering, you have the most enlightened, and you have the most tempted people. Well, the difference between the serpent can be light or dark. One if you're in the suffering side where I was really dark. People took advantage of my manifestation powers. But once I got rid of all my suffering, I was raped a lot, so I didn't have any temptations, ability to create temptations. I could make success. I was very successful at being a businessman, but that was only through belief in myself, really, really hard, fighting through all my trauma. I essentially used anxiety. Anxiety are your adult emotions, anger and resentment. Depression are your childhood emotions, fear and guilt. So if you're a depressed person, you don't take pills, you process your fear and guilt. If you're an anxious person, you don't take pills, you process your anger and resentment. ADHD is a sign of anxiety and depression. Your mind thinks a lot because it's got a lot of thinking to do. You have a lot of processing to do that you didn't do. The more trauma you get, the faster your brain goes because you've got a lot more work to do. That's ADHD. I was the most ADHD person you could ever meet. Now I'm pretty calm. If you were to see me, I know I'd jump all over in my thought process, but that's kind of the remnants of being ADHD, is that I used to think a million miles an hour and it would get sporadic. So now I can slow down my thinking, but I still have sporadic thought patterns. I didn't need to take any pills. I just needed to process my trauma. Anxiety. You watch those commercials on TV that the anti-anxiety meds cause suicidal thoughts. Well, the suicidal thoughts are always there. Your suicidal thoughts are your fear, anger, guilt, resentment. Um, Turning off the voice that's supposed to help you is the aim of those pills. Then you're stuck with just your ego, superego, and your superego's sick of suffering, so kill yourself. Whereas, if the voice was still on, the quiet one that's trying to help you, that the pills shut off, and you were able to shut down the real loud voice, listen to the quiet voice, that's how you heal. It's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's super hard. Uh, the soundtrack in your head is created, the yelling soundtrack in your head about being mad at people and being afraid of people and everything, that's your superego. The quiet voice wants to heal you, that's your spirit. It's hard to do. You got to relax. You got to do breath works, in four, hold four, out four, hold four, box breathing. The tempo of the universe is 4/4. Um, but the music they make is designed to lower your frequency. So the higher your frequency, the louder your voices are going to be. Even the quiet one gets a little louder, but it's competing against your superego, which is super loud. Those pills shut off the quiet voice, and you're just stuck with the loud voice. You get suicidal thoughts. Mania is when you break your tanks of anxiety. So if you have too much resentment, too much anger, you have mania. You break through the veil. You're in the mind. You think you're God. You can see all the thoughts of all time. That's mania, but it's just because your anger and your resentment's too high. Depression is fear and guilt. It's serotonin, dopamines, all that stuff. The levels of all that stuff is what dictates whether or not you're depressed or not. But it's emotional energy. Guilt and fear is depression. Anger and resentment is anxiety. I think that's it for today, but we'll see.